This is Robert with Dark Awakenings. First off, I want to let you all know how grateful I am for all of you. Thank you for supporting this channel and the Dark Awakenings Facebook page. I hope that you enjoy the new content featured in this video. If you've not watched the first video, I recommend that you check that out whenever you can. I really hope that getting all of this information out there will bring others together, or at least create a way for everyone to communicate and share. And if there's anyone out there going through similar experiences, or who have in the past, you're definitely not alone. I remember being alone when a lot of what is being discussed in these videos was going on in my life. Sometimes it can be difficult not being able to share what's going on, especially when the outcomes can be so uncertain. I've experienced a number of events that seemed to show me that what was happening to me was not for everyone. I have to admit that the mental fortitude and strength that is needed to make it through some of these experiences has to be extensive. I've seen some of the most physically strong and tough individuals fall apart and become overcome by their own fear, or their mind was not able to handle what they were seeing and experiencing. If you take a hard look at nature, you can see that only the strong survive, adapt, and overcome. There is no place for irrational and uncontrollable fear. Fear is truly a disease of the mind. Learning to control your emotions is a very important part of experiencing and learning more about the truth. There have been more individuals than I have ever thought that want to know more about my experiences, so I'm going to make sure that I continue to get this information out there as factually and precisely as possible. And I think that it's important to mention here, I will definitely let you know if something that I talk about is an idea, or if what I'm talking about is just what I personally believe. Have you ever wondered why the truth about our world or existence is not revealed publicly? Or why the government or the ones who know are not just simply screaming it from the rooftops or out in the streets telling everyone why we are here or what is really going on? Well, I believe the answer to that is pretty simple. Not everyone can handle it, or they're not allowed to talk about it. For some, that's a hard fact to swallow. I know that I had my moments. I almost didn't make it. There is absolutely no amount of money, physical strength, or really anything other than pure mental strength and the ability to accept things for what they are that will bring a human being to the truth and also to be able to experience it. I don't say this to invoke fear, I'm just saying it because it's true. Here's part 2 of my story. One night I was at a friend's house and I went outside. They were waiting for me. I looked up to see several starships. When I say starships, I mean the crafts that camouflage themselves as mock stars in the sky. At this point in my experience, I thought they were just some really advanced, possibly reverse-engineered drone technology that was merged with an advanced form of artificial intelligence. I figured that they were coming out of MacDill Air Force Base as some kind of global surveillance planetary defense program. I assumed that now that I was aware of them, that I interacted with them, that they were going to test some of their capabilities on me. And at this point, I would have been willing to keep going with whatever this was. I was in it all the way, and there was no turning back. Whenever they wanted me to come with them, there would always be multiple crafts that would make it very clear that they wanted me to follow them. This post will give you some idea and detail about what I call being flipped. As I followed them, everything was exactly as it always seemed in that area that I lived in. Eventually, I got to a point, and suddenly the air changed. It would seem misty and filled with particles. This only lasted for less than a minute. Then there was a smell. This smell is like a plastic or a gas of some kind. It's really hard to describe it. It isn't overpowering or sickening. You can just smell it. It was very obvious to me that I was no longer where I was at before. The next part seems important to discuss. There were beings there that appeared human and in some kind of military gear. I assumed that they were in some kind of branch or group that was unknown to the public. They had insignias and uniforms that were black and had to do with space. An example of one that I remember seeing was on a vehicle. It was a circular patch with what looked like asteroids and stars on it. Many of them wore sunglasses, and it was always at night. Some would drive past me in this new environment, and there would be other vehicles with very strange lights that would flash in patterns. There were also some kind of very high communication towers and beacons, like you would see here, except they would be flashing in rapid strobing patterns. This particular time that I'm discussing now, I saw prints in the ground that I assumed had been possibly left by a spacesuit because of the way the boot print looked. And once I registered that mentally, I really started to look around a lot harder. I remember thinking that this was some kind of model environment, and that I definitely was on another planet, star, moon, somewhere else. The developments and homes that I was seeing had video screens instead of windows. There were images on those screens of what I imagine it would normally look like inside, but it was a screen, completely fake. Here comes some of the weird stuff here. Some of the structures were completely unfinished, and roofs, walls, part of the structure would be just there, not complete at all, like they didn't need to be attached and that gravity had absolutely no effect, like I was literally inside of some kind of unfinished simulation. Now, as I walked, I noticed that there were a few weapons just lying on the ground, a few composite knives that were all one piece and kind of flattened out, and some wooden clubs that had hand grips on one end. I felt as if I was being tested. I remember picking up one of the clubs and then putting it back down, and I said, "No violence, no weapons." I kept walking. Shortly after, I began to wonder if they were left there to help me. What was I going to encounter? Did I need a weapon? Then I just kind of came to terms that I wasn't going to succumb to the fear. I was going to be positive that, I could survive this using my mind, and even if I was in some sort of danger, the weapons that I saw would not be very useful. So I began to notice also that the grass, the flowers, the trees, they looked real enough, but it was all some kind of technology. Every blade of grass, even the vegetation. I noticed that some of the plants and trees looked extremely alien to me as well. The rest looked like what I had normally seen before, as far as the vegetation goes. And as I walked past numerous homes, there were beings here that were clearly not human at all, but they were trying to look human, appear human. I think that this was occurring so that they would not frighten me. They did not have the same structure as a human body would have, and I knew that they were either able to try to look human, or it was a hologram-like technology that must have been casting a human appearance on these beings that were obviously not human at all. Now, I also saw what appeared to be two humanoid robots. One was a child-sized robot, and the other was the size of a normal adult, and they both had lights where their eyes were. I lifted my arm with my hand out in a waving gesture to what appeared to be a small child-sized android. The adult-sized android stood by the child-sized one, and they just watched. And I continued to walk, and walking past these structures that were built like residential homes, and I came across a fort, or more accurately, some kind of compound-like structure. There were several very fast-moving beings watching me from the structure outside, and on a section that was about 12 or so feet from the ground. I remember the small group of them were all wearing extremely advanced technology. I could see lights coming off of their headgear and some on whatever it was that they were wearing. I couldn't get close enough at the time, and the way that they were moving told me that I should not approach without some kind of invitation. Some of these residential structures that I saw did not have screens displaying images, and inside there appeared to be human beings. At one point, I saw a seemingly normal family pull up in a regular extended cab pickup truck. They got out, and there were two dogs with them. They went inside, and the two dogs ran at me down the driveway barking. And, with no fear, I approached the end of the driveway, and I saw them flicker. They were not real at all. They were holograms. And until I saw that flicker effect, I realized that there was absolutely no way for me to previously tell that they were not real. It made me question if some of the other beings that I had seen were, in fact, holograms. It was pretty mind-blowing for me. I never felt threatened, but I had this feeling of absolute amazement and an eerie feeling that I was probably not going home again. I just did not believe that after everything that I was seeing that I would be allowed to go back. Another strange thing to me at the time was that I could see my shadow as I walked, and there were other shadows walking with me. I could tell that whatever was following me was definitely not human by the shapes of these shadows. I wasn't scared. I was pretty much all in for whatever was going to occur here. And I would verbally ask whoever I saw that they were welcome to walk with me, and that whoever was there that I could not see was welcome too. I remembered constantly narrating my thoughts out loud and talking because I knew without a doubt that I was being massively observed here. Vehicles would drive by and turned lights on that pointed or directed me to where they wanted me to go. I remember seeing a vehicle drive by, and I could see through the tinted window. I could make out what looked like a holographic display projected over the center of the dashboard, and it was a visual image of me rotating with data coming off of it. And I only got a glimpse of this, and I realized that this was most likely a very intricate situation and that the purpose was beyond my ability to currently understand at that time. I was so dehydrated. Water was the hardest thing to find. I had nothing. The starships, they continued to guide me. We had a system at this point. Up for yes, down for no. They would kind of dip in directions that they wanted me to go, and I would ask them over and over if I was going the right way. I would wonder, why me? I would feel like I was making a fool of myself in certain situations or appearing very unintelligent to the observers because of my vocal narration and my clumsiness in some of these locations. This particular time, I was led to what appeared to be a massive development, unfinished. I saw several access points that appeared to be entrances to whatever was underground. At the time, I assumed that whatever I was at, whatever this was, must be some kind of joint human, military, and extraterrestrial compound, and that I most likely was not going home ever again after seeing this. Now, I tried not to think about it, but there was no way that I wanted this to end. No matter what the end result was going to be, I was going to continue. This was absolutely amazing to me. I can imagine what some people might think hearing this, but like I've said before, I would never have told this to anyone if I have not been guided and asked to do so. And I noticed as well in this particular experience that I was being tested in some of these areas. I would see what looked like normal signs and things with directions and what seemed like instructions. I made sure that I followed the directions and I did not go anywhere that seemed restricted. At one gate I approached, there was a speaker and a number pad attached to it. And I heard someone who must have been military speaking English coming from that speaker, and it cut off right before I got to it. I don't know what they were saying, but I think they wanted me to go to this gate that the speaker was located. I did not figure everything out that I encountered. I remember that I would have this feeling of failure. Certain gates and things that I found, it seemed like they had a way to open them, but I couldn't figure them out. At the end of this particular event, I was still flipped on that other scenario, and I was completely exhausted. You know, as I walked at the end of this particular journey, the flip occurred again, and I recognized immediately the area I was in. I was back to where I began at. I was exhausted, I was tired, I was dehydrated, and I made it all the way back to my friend's house where my car was parked outside. And I remember that I drank so much water that I almost got sick when I got there. And the starships were still there. They stayed with me until I got back safe. I drove home and I passed out in bed completely exhausted. Now, I'm going to end this here. There is so much information, and this is just one single night, one event, and I know that not all that happened this time was completely covered here. I want to close this with the following statements. Just be kind, be generous, be selfless and loving. Let go of your hate and your anger, and dissolve any of the prejudices that you might have that are based on appearances. Mental strength and having a very open mind is very important here. You got to be strong. And if you ever get afraid, train your mind to process it fast. My method is to turn fear and shock into excitement. There is much more than meets the eye. This story is very far from over. I'm grateful, very grateful and privileged to be able to share my experiences with others like you, and I look forward to putting out the next video, which is currently in the works now. Thank you so much for being a part of Dark Awakenings. Don't forget to subscribe so you can be updated to when the next video is posted, and until then, keep your eyes to the sky.